Call Thursday, May 21st, City Commission work session to order. First item on the agenda would be the May 7th work session notes. Any changes?
None.
Stand as written. We're going to skip agenda item number 2 for now. Agenda item number 3, 230th Avenue and 55th Street intersection improvements, KDOT agreement.
Okay, we'll have to advance ahead a little bit here. Oops. Okay. So, good evening, Commissioners. John Brown, Project Manager for the City of Hayes. And this item deals with improvements to the intersection of 230th Avenue and 55th Street, just north of the exit 157 exit of I-70. In 2013, Ellis County applied for and was awarded economic development funding from KDOT, which eventually amounted to $1.5 million for improvements at this intersection. The proposed development of the Hayes Truck Plaza project prompted the annexation of property and right-of-way in the area of this project, of the KDOT project. And in December 2019, the Ellis County Board of Commissioners requested that the project sponsorship be transferred to the City of Hayes. At last week's commission meeting, tax increment financing, a CID, and the developer agreement were approved in support of the Truck Plaza and the 230th Avenue and 55th Street project. The economic development project covered under the KDOT agreement, which in your packet includes grading, pavement, curb and gutter, storm sewer, sidewalk, and pavement markings to improve 230th Avenue from just north of the westbound I-70 ramps to approximately 1,300 feet north of the 55th Street intersection, and improvements to 55th Street from 230th Avenue to approximately 800 feet to the east. To formalize the responsibilities of both the city and the Department of Transportation, KDOT has provided an agreement to be executed by the mayor and the Secretary of Transportation. Key elements of the agreement include that KDOT will reimburse to the city 100% of the actual costs of construction, not to exceed $1.5 million. The city must submit to KDOT verification that the development triggering this grant is underway by December 31st. The city, through the developer, is responsible for having the project designed in conformity with state and federal design regulations. The city will solicit bids and let the contract for the project to the lowest responsible bidder with concurrence from KDOT. And the city, through the developer, shall provide construction engineering inspection in accordance with state and federal regulations requirements. The schedule is that the project is currently in the design phase for a fall bid opening, with construction to begin in the spring of 2021. I suppose it could be earlier if the winter weather allows such. The City of Hayes has no monetary contribution to this project. Any costs exceeding the $1.5 million KDOT grant will be covered by the developer under the agreement approved last week. And your options are to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement, direct staff to another option, or do nothing. And should you move this forward next week, the action requested is on the screen. I stand for any questions.
John, I think the county applied for this grant back in 2013. This 1.5 million, is that an updated engineer's estimate, or is that from back in 2013?
Well, the 1.5 is what has been approved by KDOT as far as funding. We anticipate, I believe the current construction estimate is somewhere in the $1.7 to $1.8 million, and the developer agrees to pay any amount over the 1.5 million that's reimbursable from KDOT.
That's why I was wondering if that was
Right.
the new update then. That's not based on 2013 then. Thank you.
Was there a time limit in which that grant had to be used? I'm sorry, I went out to call.
Oh.
You might have said that.
There's not really a time limit for when the money would go away. There are requirements that the development that triggers for the development occur. One of those being the developer agreement itself by the end of the year. So once that is, we can start getting reimbursement from that. I asked that specific question to KDOT, and KDOT gave me the answer. Well, there's no deadline on that, except for that the development spurring this whole thing. There's proof that it's going forward by the end of the year.
So in 2013, when they applied for this money, what was the premise of their request? Why did they apply for it? There was nothing happening.
So at that time, the county was actually looking at possibly making improvements to 55th Street.
Okay.
And knowing that this would have to be a part of that. And then also just the pending possible development of that area up there. So KDOT didn't have any pools of money for the street creation itself, but they had some money under their economic development bucket. But it's got to be tied to a specific economic development. So I think the 1.5 at that time was just a very back of the napkin estimate on, what it might take, but it also had to be tied to some form of economic development that was spurred on by the
Wasn't that when we were in conversations with the previous potential developer?
yes.
Okay.
So that's why, and there wasn't a firm, it had to be done by this date. They just said it needs to be tied to economic development. I'm sure they wouldn't let anybody sit on it forever.
You had to just quick get into the pool is what it
Yes.
amounted to.
But then this qualified and just had to be a development that was going to be brought into the city limits. And so when we talked to KDOT about taking over assignment of it, they were fine with that.
Thank you.
And this, go ahead. This project will be done and completed before the Northwest Corridor is even going to start, correct?
Quite possibly,
Possibly.
likely. The Northwest Business Corridor project is probably more slated to begin like in 2 years. So it should be done by then.
I had a question on this timeline. There's a bullet point that says the city must submit to KDOT that development necessitating I can't say it.
Necessitating.
Project is underway by December 2020. And then down here it says project is bid let for fall of 2020 with construction to begin in spring of 2021.
So the two different projects, the project necessitating this economic development grant is the truck plaza.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
So
what
that,
KDOT, yeah, so like
that project needs to be under some form of construction.
it needs to be, and they've said various things over the time, and one was the developer agreement, which was signed last week, which I'm hanging my hat on.
Okay.
Because I've got, and other times they've said like extension of utilities. So they're planning on extending the water and sewer as part of this, very soon. That would also be a trigger.
Okay.
The earthwork that's already occurring out there could technically be considered, that it's underway. It just
And
has
by
to-
this summer, they'll be doing finished grading work
Right.
too to get ready for streets.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
Okay, we'll go back to agenda item number 2, Fort Hays State University Sternberg Water Tower logo. Mr. Crispin.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Crispin, Director of Water Resources. I will go back to the beginning here. This evening, Scott Cason and I, Scott with Fort Hays State University, we're going to discuss the project to repaint the logos on the top of the 1 million gallon water tower that is near Sternberg Museum. Back in mid-2018, you may recall, the city staff presented a project to repaint both of the city's water towers. That one there, the 1 million gallon tower, and then north of town, the 500,000 gallon tower. This involved the removal of the original Fort Hays State logo. Basically, all the paint was removed from the 1 million gallon tower. That original logo that was at the top of the tower was painted in the late 90s. So that was put on that tower in the late 90s. When the original logo was added to the tower, the city executed an agreement with Fort Hays State and to put that logo up there. In preparation for the 2020 project for Fort Hays State University, an updated agreement was drafted, and it was drafted some time ago, back in 2018, but it's taken some time in between there to get to this point. That agreement was drafted with the city attorney. It's very similar to the agreement that was done in 1997. Just want to update you that the addition of the Fort Hays State logos at the top of the tower near that, at that tower near Sternberg Museum is at no cost to the city of Hays. This will not require any action of you, and Fort Hays State is simply asking for your blessing to proceed with their project. So a map of the area, just a general location. Obviously, pretty much everybody knows where that water tower is, but northeast corner of the city of the Hays limits. Here's a little bit more zoomed in version. If you see right there to the left side, or the west side basically, is Sternberg Museum, and then our water tower is just south of I-70. This is a photo of before 2018. That was before we actually took care of that, the paint on the tower. So that was pre-2018. The photo on the left is the tower that had been sandblasted. And the reason why it had to be sandblasted is because it was a lead-based paint. And so because of the chipping and concerns about the environment, we chose to have it sandblasted and then repainted. So the photo on the right is a new updated photo. You may also know that, well, that was back in 2018, but you may notice that it is pretty bright up there. We've replaced some of the lights on that tower, so it is illuminated at night. I'm told you can see it from many miles away, so it has plenty of light on it. Next, I'm going to introduce Scott Cason. He's the Chief Communications Officer with Fort Hays State, and he's agreed to come up here and kind of talk about their timeline, what they're working on, and then kind of just show you what they're proposing.
Good evening, y'all. I really appreciate the opportunity to come visit with you, and I apologize
Welcome.
for being a little bit late tonight. I started work a little over a year ago at Fort Hays State University, and about 6 months into my tenure, I learned that there was this agreement out to put a logo on the water tower, but nobody had acted on it. So, I drive by it every day because I live in Russell, so I see it twice a day. I know that the coatings on the tower are top notch. They're premier. They're going to endure. So what my thought was, the original agreement said to affix a Sternberg logo on that. And as you saw in an older picture, that logo is kind of busy. There's a lot to it. But my thought was, and I'll show you in just a second here, to use both sides of that tower, east facing and west facing. And my logic is, when you're coming from the east, if you're heading west on I-70, there's plenty of directions to the Sternberg Museum to get off on Commerce Parkway and things like that. But there's nothing that really big and bold that welcomes you to Hays, and really to us speaks to the partnership between the university and the city. So we're proposing that on the east facade, we have a Welcome to Hays, home of Fort Hays State University. Now, if you're coming from the west, you're likely to miss Sternberg, because there's nothing that tells you till it's too late. You drive by the dome that when I first saw it looked like a KDOT storage unit for sand and salt. I learned later I think it was a gym at one time. So what we want to do is make sure that folks coming from the west have as much of a chance to stop off at the Sternberg as well, knowing that coming from the east, there's plenty of warning to get off. So this is what we propose, is to use both sides of that tower. What I've been understanding is it divides into thirds. So we can affix it so that the two don't run together, and they're clearly visible from each side. And we've simplified in the bottom right image, we've simplified the logo a little bit so that it's a little less busy. It would be very hard to read as you're driving along the freeway there with all the other things in it. So, and we give you the next exit thing there too.
Did it always have the tiger on up there, or is that new? That's what I love, and I can't believe I'd missed it before if it was there. I just love that.
Yeah, I like that tiger up there. That's nice.
Before it was just the Sternberg Museum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really the change in the agreement that we're working on, is that it's both logos on this tower instead of just the Sternberg. And I'm glad you mentioned that tiger. It's so distinctive. We're the only
very.
ones anywhere that have that logo. So we love it on campus. Those of you who are alums love it, I'm sure, too. So we want to celebrate that.
When I like where, like you said, if you miss it, you can go to the next exit and still get there. I like that.
Absolutely.
It looks really good.
I think it looks great.
I'm an alum. I think it's awesome. I advertise for 4As every time I can when I'm traveling about. So I'm excited about this. This is going to look nice.
I really appreciate you saying that. Timeline, we want to try to get it done this spring. With your go ahead, I can then put out an RFP from the university. I'm already been in contact with a couple vendors and with Rick Penner from the company that made the coatings, so that we're going to make sure that whatever's affixed to that works well with that coating, and will hold up and last.
I think it's great.
So there won't be a vote on this, just consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the agreement in place, and I can enact that. So as long as you guys are okay with the visual of the logo, then we can make it
Yeah,
happen.
looks great.
Get her
Move ahead.
started.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.
I might add too, because I figured a question would come up and I didn't have it in my presentation. The last coating on there was about 23 years. Was from when it was originally done to when we just did this project in 2018. And the expectation of at least the paint that's on the tower is about 25 years. So our goal would be to obviously see that up there for the next 25 years before we'd have to take any action.
Well, and as you said, with those added lights for the brightness,
Yeah.
this will
Oh,
really
yeah.
stand out. So
Absolutely.
that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Scott.
again.
Going back. Okay. Next item on the agenda would be ordinance terminating the Home Depot Transportation Development District, TDD. Taxes are going down.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kim Rupp, Director of Finance. Current Home Depot Transportation Development District includes Home Depot, IHOP, Hampton Inn, Town Place Suites by Marriott, and the JT Travel Plaza. A 3/4% TDD sales tax in that district has been in place since April 1 of 2005, garnering approximately $3.2 million for Phase 1 and a portion of Phase 2 improvements in that area. The 3/4% outperformed initial projections, and therefore the 2004 TDD bonds financing Phase 1 improvements were called early and completed in January 2018, saving approximately $356,000 in interest costs. Most recently, the Commission approved a portion of Phase 2 improvements, which included extending East 41st past Home Depot to the Vineyard Park entrance. That project's now complete, and the TDD sales tax collected since the payoff of the TDD bonds was sufficient to reimburse the capital projects funds for the improvements. Therefore, it's now time to terminate the Home Depot Transportation Development District, thus ending the 3/4% TDD sales tax by passage of an ordinance. To be clear, the TIF out there will still remain. Those bonds are being paid, so there was two different issuances there. Those bonds are being paid by the city's portion of the tax increment financing in that area, as well as 0.5% of the city's retailer sales tax out there that goes to the general fund. Those bonds will be scheduled to be paid out in 2024. So next week, we will ask that you approve the ordinance terminating the Home Depot TDD.
I have a question, Kim. Can any of this TDD money be used to replace sidewalks? There's some sidewalks up there that are not in good shape, and a couple of places on the streets up there probably are going to have to be replaced, or is that the city's responsibility now?
Well, I guess John could answer the question about the sidewalks. We could use the funding, that mechanism for that, yes, if you so deemed.
Right. So as far as like spelled out in the projects, as far as TDD utilization, we would have to look and see if it was authorized as part of what it was allowed to be spent on. The monies between now and when it finally shuts off, those monies would be captured and rolled into the general fund, and then you can use it for whatever you want. So if there are sidewalks in disrepair, technically it's the property owner's responsibility. If there's areas where there is no sidewalks, then we could put that in ourselves.
Well, 43rd and Sherman, that intersection, the concrete is not good right there. There's several sections in there that, have you noticed that, John? That, I think if we have the chance to capture monies to repair that before this goes away, we should look at that.
So you're talking about the sidewalk or the concrete in the street itself?
The concrete in the street itself
Okay.
at 43rd and Sherman.
We'll take a look at it.
The sidewalks on the north side of IHOP. There's several places in there that they are broke out, raised up. But anyway, I was just wondering if we could capture some of this money to make those repairs.
Either way, yes, because it's either going to be allowable as possibly maintenance under the existing district, or it'll be general fund monies, which you could direct to spend any way you wanted to. But we can check the sidewalks out, and if there's developed property along there, then we can make sure the property owners take care of those too.
Okay.
Why is, and maybe Mr. Crispin would know this, why is the sidewalks, like where they've watered there, why is it changed that color? I've never seen that.
What?
Right by IHOP. It's almost like a,
Just fertilizer.
Rust colored.
Fertilizer
Yeah,
and
like
stuff.
rust
Oh, yeah,
colored.
it's the fertilizer they use
Fertilizer
in
they
there.
put on
They use a lot of
they-
iron in their fertilizer for that
Yeah.
fescue along there.
And then they let it get on there, and then they, when they turn their sprinklers
that's
on.
from fertilizer. I've
Well,
never
that's
seen
what
it
it's-
that bad.
Yeah, iron will
Yeah.
get on your sidewalk. and
That's
will
why they
turn it.
say that when you apply your fertilizer, you make sure that you sweep it or blow it off
Right.
and get it off the concrete because it gets wet and then that's what discolors.
I mean, I'm seeing fertilizer do that, but I've never seen it that bad. I was just curious.
A lot of fertilizer.
Yeah, that's a lot of fertilizer. Yeah.
I totally agree with Commissioner Malik. I'd have brought it up if he hadn't. I think if we have the opportunity to capture those funds, we absolutely should do that. I didn't know about the sidewalks. I haven't noticed that. I don't go out there as much as you do, or my husband does.
I made a point to go out there and check that out today.
It's a great idea to
drive
capture
all-
those funds.
drive all those streets.
So, just so I'm clear, I mean, in October, when this goes off, the county tax, the new tax will go on, but the sales tax will still be lower with the new taxes going back
About
on.
1/4%.
Yeah, 1/4%. I mean, that's, how often can we say that? I mean, that's good news. Moving on?
Move it on.
Moving on. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, North Vine Street Corridor Project, authorizing general obligation bond financing.
Jim Rupp, Director of Finance. As the North Vine Street corridor gets underway, and due to the fact that expenditures up to this point have already occurred, it's necessary to authorize GO bond financing for these improvements by adopting a resolution. The Main Traffic Way Act, KSA 12-685, allows for financing of certain main traffic way improvements with GO bonds using a two-step process. The first step involved designating those streets as main traffic ways, which you did last week. The second step is the process involving adopting a resolution authorizing the GO bond financing. Pursuant to an agreement previously entered into between KDOT and the city, KDOT will administer construction of that project, and the city will provide a portion of the financing estimated at the $7.111 million, which we've taken care of now. The city plans to initially pay costs from funds available out of the capital projects and will later be reimbursed for proceeds of the GO bonds, which are expected to be issued here late in 2020, maybe early 2021. And at such time, the commission will consider an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the GO bonds, and the debt service for that issue will come from the transient guest tax. So next week, we will ask for you to approve the resolution authorizing those GO bonds.
Moving on?
Move it on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Go in reverse order. Commissioner Jacobs, you have any comments?
I don't have any comments, but thank you.
Commissioner Reuter?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Burgess?
Yeah, have a good Memorial Weekend, long weekend. I, for one, am getting out of the county for the first time in 2.5 months for a weekend to go to my folks and my wife's folks. So anybody out traveling and doing things, still observe, social distancing rules and those kind of things. And we're getting through this, I feel. So let's finish off here in the next few weeks, and hopefully we can open up the state.
Absolutely. Good for you guys. Commissioner Melick?
Have a safe Memorial Day.
I would agree. Happy Memorial Day, and yes, let's get Ellis County, keep it going. They're doing a great job. We're adjourned.